Hello, good morning, everyone.
Hi.
We're still waiting for a few more guests to arrive, so I'll give it another 2 minutes and then we can start the webinar.
Okay, good.
Good morning. One or 2 minutes only, and then we are good to go. Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing very well today. It's a really great pleasure for me to welcome you all to our webinar. Thank you for making the time. I know some of you are actually in different time zones right now and had to either stay a bit late or wake up a bit earlier. This webinar is part of a series of online webinars Tenske is proud to be presenting, and I think that some of you have already attended the previous webinars we've done, and I hope that you will be joining us in the future as well. In this virtual conference room, I recognize some familiar names, but also I can see quite a few new ones. So on behalf of Tenske team, a very warm welcome to all of you today. The journey to curing incontinence, that's with Unicare. That's the subject of this conversation. Incontinence is the word that most people say quietly. Urinary incontinence is actually a very widespread disorder affecting millions of people over the world with important and probably still underestimated negative consequences on personal and social well-being. Urinary incontinence is very often associated with the low quality of life, and I'm sure we all understand the importance of the good quality of life. So technology advancements the world is making today made it possible to provide solutions to healthcare problems like UI. So we clearly still do need to spread the incontinence awareness though. So today we hope to envisage our experience and knowledge around available treatments, and not only the ones that improve the symptoms of incontinence, but most importantly can be used for prevention of the condition. So electrotherapy is known to provide the cure to urinary incontinence, and that's what we're trying to sort of discuss here today. So the good news is that together we can spread out the word on the product that is helping millions of women around the world to cure bladder weakness. Together we can break taboos and help people change their lives for the better. Before we jump onto the actual webinar, I'd like to go through a couple of technical things. So the functionality of this Zoom webinar, your active participation through the webinar, through the whole session is very welcome. So I'm going to be sending you all now to so-called black room, where you will be muted to avoid any background noises that may distract our presenters. But throughout the presentation, you can enter your questions and comments in the question box or chat, which is at the bottom of your screen. So if you move your mouse to the bottom of the Zoom screen, you'll see the Q&A button there. If you would rather ask a question in person, you can do so by pressing the button on the control panel to raise your hand. And then at the end of the session, at the end of the webinar, we will have Q&A session where we all, again, will be in the same room, seeing each other. We can see and hear each other, and so we can discuss anything that would be of interest or anything that has not been covered during the presentations today. So once again, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you would enjoy what we have prepared for you. The webinar is live on YouTube. The links to that webinar to see this will be shared with you afterwards as well. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy it. So it will take me a few minutes just to sort of make sure everyone is in the room where you can hear the presentations and see the presentations. Bear with us. This is your time to grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee and enjoy the presentations going forward. Almost there. I do apologize for the delay here. Right. So today's webinar will be split in a few sessions and we'll try to cover as much as possible. We're going to talk about urinary incontinence in general, and that would be presented by our e-commerce sales manager, Emily Stoffel. That will then be followed by 2 case studies, and we are really grateful for Andrea Bruce and Katri Vistel to participate in this webinar, to come and join us and share their stories. I hope you'll find them very interesting and insightful as well. Again, another colleague of mine, Ediz Gozil, our export sales manager, will present the actual device. This is our latest development, Unicare, which offers muscle stimulation and TENS program as well. So we're going to be covering only EMS functionality of this device later today. And that then will be followed by a short presentation of the design and what we thought, what are the thinking behind the certain design parameters that we've made and we've developed. That will be presented by our product manager, Han Wei Lim. And at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A questions and answers moment. So when you all will have an opportunity to ask or comment, and hopefully it will be another engaging and insightful chat together. So just to sort of, I'm sure when you were registering, you have read the information that we've put together about Andrea and Katri, our guests today. But so the first part of the presentation will be presented by, like I said, my colleague Emily Stoffel. Emily works in our e-commerce department, so has done quite a lot of research around incontinence and products and the actual condition. So the floor is yours, Emily, and good luck.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. So I'm going to be taking you through an introduction to incontinence. We're going to be talking about some stats and about some things that you may not have known about incontinence. Incontinence, simply put, is the unintentional passing of urine, and it falls into 4 main categories of stress, urge, overflow, and total incontinence. They are quite true to their names. Stress incontinence is leaks caused when there is stress on the bladder, for example, when coughing, lifting heavy objects, the one you see in all the incontinence adverts, jumping on a trampoline with your children, etc., etc. Urge incontinence, like its name, is when you feel the urge suddenly to use the toilet, but you can't get to the toilet in time, which often causes leaks. Overflow incontinence is when a patient is unable to fully empty their bladder, which can cause frequent leaking and also lead to infections. And total incontinence is when you cannot hold any urine in your bladder, so you are constantly leaking. And although this is a problem that is often associated with the elderly, incontinence actually affects a lot of young people and many more than you would have thought. Some incontinence facts. Urinary incontinence is a significant health problem and it can cause detrimental effects to every aspect of a person's life. It can be financially taxing, it can affect their social life, it can affect their careers and cause mental health problems. For example, athletes who suffer from incontinence, it can cause real problems in their career and even end their career at times. It's estimated that around 400 million people worldwide are affected by bladder problems. In the UK, that is around 1 in 5 people. So when you're walking around, every 5th person you see could be suffering in silence. In the UK, 24% of older people are affected by urinary incontinence. And when those people are in institutionalized care, that jumps up to 30 to 60%. 25% of those are also affected by bowel incontinence, so that is a large number of people. And although elderly people do suffer more than young people, as we said, young people do suffer as well. I spoke to a lady who wasn't that old recently who could not do her shopping because she was so worried about getting into her car and getting out of her car with leaks, and she couldn't get a delivery slot because it was the pandemic and she had no one else to help her. And it was very sad that she was suffering like that for something that is quite easily preventable. Women are 5 times more likely to develop urinary incontinence than men, and half of the female population will at some point in their lives experience incontinence. That is a huge statistic for a problem that has been around for a very long time, and women are quite often just handed a pack of pads and told that they need to adjust their lives to this. Again, this is something that can often be solved and it doesn't need to be that way. Around 12.4% of all women are affected by this and 5% of men. That is over 423 million people worldwide that are suffering from urinary incontinence alone. Going a bit more into that, of the 8.7% of the population that suffer from urinary incontinence, we can break that down into some subcategories here that you can see, and also into male and female. Although males do suffer from other types of incontinence more than those main 3, they do still suffer from them, whereas females, it is mainly the stress incontinence with a mixture of the others thrown in there as well. Fecal incontinence also affects up to 6% of people under 40 and 15% of older people, and combined fecal and urinary incontinence affects around 10% of women and 6 to 10% of men, increasing to almost 50% in nursing homes. This can be both embarrassing for the patient, but it can also pose a health risk to the other patients living there with them and also the staff that are taking care of them. If urinary incontinence were a country, it would be the third biggest in the world with a larger population than the United States of America. Just a reminder, that's over 400 million people. As far as geography goes, there isn't more areas in the world that are kind of suffering more than others. It is a pretty even mix with not too much fluctuation, which just goes to show that it's a problem that is happening the world over and is affecting a lot of people the world over. Some of the causes of incontinence. Stress and urge incontinence are both caused by muscle defects. Stress incontinence is the weakening of the muscles, whereas urge incontinence is the hyperactivity of muscles, both of which can be treated with EMS. Overflow incontinence is often caused by an obstruction, and total incontinence is normally caused by a birth defect or injury. There are certain things that can increase the chances of urinary incontinence. Some are quite expected and others are not so expected and not so talked about. Pregnancy and vaginal birth, for an example, is one that most people know can contribute, as well as obesity due to the stress put on the muscles. A family history of incontinence and increasing age, although getting older doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get incontinence, it just increases your chance with age. As well as those, the lesser known ones, such as forcing urination. So when you'd go on a school trip and your teacher would say, go to the toilet before we leave because you're not going to get a chance to go, that forcing of urination can weaken the muscles. The angle of some modern toilets also can contribute to this because the muscles are being stretched and tensed in a way that they shouldn't be, and also excessive caffeine and alcohol consumption, which is something that not a lot of people would think would contribute. Treating incontinence, there is quite a few options, some surgical, some not. The surgical procedures depend on the type of incontinence, and not all of them are suitable for all of the types of incontinence. In addition to that, not all people want or are able to get surgery. For example, you may not be eligible if you cannot take the time off work, if you cannot arrange childcare for the time that you need to be in the hospital. There's a myriad of reasons why people can't or don't want to get surgery. The non-surgical options are lifestyle changes, such as things we talked about in the last slide. So not forcing urine, cutting out excessive alcohol and caffeine, but that is not always guaranteed to work. Pelvic floor exercises, such as manual pelvic floor exercises and machines such as the Unicare. Bladder training, for example, waiting longer between needing the toilet, but again, a lot of people cannot do this. They've had incontinence for so long, or their incontinence is that bad that they cannot perform these exercises at all. They don't have any control anymore. And medicine, but again, a lot of people cannot take these medicines either for health reasons, they're not eligible for them, or just because they will interfere with other medications, or some people just don't like using medications. So it's not always feasible for these customers to have a lot of these other options. It leaves them with the Kegel exercises, and a lot of people cannot perform these exercises unaided, which is where machines like the Unicare come in to help those people to tense the right muscles and begin their journey. The financial effect of incontinence is something that not a lot of people consider. A lot of people think of the embarrassment and the inconvenience. Few people think of the financial burden that it can bring. The process of diagnosing and treating incontinence is arduous, and the costs are incredibly high. Before you even get into treatment, you have to go through diagnostics, sometimes specialists, and not only are you sometimes paying for the cost of that, but you are losing wages with the time that you have to take off work to go to these appointments. There's all the routine care, again, taking time off work, the travel there and back, because sometimes you may have to see a specialist that is quite a way away, so that wouldn't be covered, unfortunately. And the consequence costs, the worst case scenario for treatments and falls and other complications that can come from incontinence. And that is not including the cost of the pads and the daily costs, which we will go into a little bit more now. The cost of treatment for incontinence is around £432 million a year for the NHS, or around £1,968 per patient. And the sufferer themselves, the patient, could end up spending around £900 a year on incontinence products out of their own pocket. So that is a huge ongoing cost for both the patient and the NHS. Many just learn to live with it and don't explore other avenues because they are not offered to them or they are not aware of them. And many end up housebound, depressed, suffering from mental health issues and feeling like they can't even leave the house. It has its toll on the environment as well, all of these disposable pads. An estimated 3 billion nappies and incontinence pads are thrown away every year, and that contributes to up to 3% of household waste. Incontinence pads, the way they are produced, creates toxic volatile chemicals. They then take over 500 years to biodegrade, and as they are biodegrading, they release those chemicals back into the environment. So for something that you're wearing for a couple of hours, it is affecting and damaging the environment for up to 500 years. If you Google incontinence pads and the environment, you will see a few news stories of where shipment containers full of incontinence pads or waste containers have tipped over in the sea and they have washed up on the beach. At times, it has taken huge community efforts to clear these from the beach because, as mentioned, when they start biodegrading, they release toxic chemicals which can be really detrimental to wildlife and to the environment. And although they are designed to be disposed of, a lot of people flush them away, which causes further problems. And this is something, as I mentioned, worn for a couple of hours. And we have up to 400 million people suffering in the world, and the average person goes through about 200 pads a year. So that is 400 million people throwing away 200 pads a year each. And these take 500 years to biodegrade. There is only so much space for these pads to go. So a better option needs to be introduced. That's where the Unicare comes in. It's cheaper as opposed to the £900 a year for the patient and the £1,968 for the NHS that we discussed. It is a one-off payment of less than £200 with minimal replacement parts twice a year. It's a lot more environmentally friendly. It's got a rechargeable battery, so there's no changing of batteries. The only thing that will need to be disposed of is the accessories that are very small, and that will only be once every 6 months that these need disposing of, rather than up to 80 billion pads a year being disposed the world over. It's comfortable. It's a tingling sensation for 20 minutes a day rather than 24 hours a day of being in a wet, uncomfortable pad, subjecting yourself to skin infections and further complications that can cause by being in wet pads. It's effective. The results can be seen in as little as 4 weeks, and it cures incontinence rather than masking it. This is a long-term cure and will work forever, as opposed to something that you're having to change every couple of hours just to kind of feel comfortable. So in as little as 6 weeks, you could theoretically have your life back. And if you stick with it, these results will last forever. And it's long lasting. With maintenance program that is provided on the Unicare, if you keep up with these maintenance sessions, this result will last forever. So for that one-off payment and the accessories that you'll need every so often, that can be your problem solved forever, and you could potentially be throwing away your last incontinence pad. So that's it from me. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to be passing you over to one of our lovely guest speakers to introduce a case study on EMS treatment for weak pelvic floor muscles.
Thank you very much, Emily. A lovely overview of the condition, and I hope everyone, our guests, have found out something new, have learned something today from Emily's stats. I've just introduced, I will just introduce Andrea. Andrea is a good friend of ours, as you have read a short bio of on Andrea on at the point of registration. Andrea is working with us in Brazil. She is a really good advocate of Tenskare as a brand, but most importantly, EMS as a treatment for bladder weakness or for weak pelvic floor muscle. And hopefully Andrea will share a really interesting story of her own, her journey with Tenskare and our products. And if you have, like I said at the beginning, if you have any questions, you either send them through the chat or we'll ask them in person at the end of the session. Once again, Emily, thank you very much. And Andrea, it's up to you now. So you can take the floor.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Andrea, I don't think you will hear a reply, so we will assume that everyone is hearing.
Is there ready to
Otherwise, there
hear
will
me?
be messages. Yes. So.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join this meeting. So I'm happy to give my testimony and talk a little bit about my story, okay, with tense care and my incontinence problem. So it all started a few years ago when I was around 44 years old. I used to jog and I was training to join a competition when I started to notice that I was leaking. So it was a very unpleasant feeling. I tried to control the urine, but I couldn't. And I didn't know what was happening. So at that time, I had already 3 kids. Okay, and I felt terrible, felt old, weak, and because I never had this problem, I didn't know anything about my pelvic floor or how weak it could be and how many muscles. So I started to look and to understand what was happening. And one day, searching and in Facebook, I heard this woman saying that she was, improving her condition because she was using this device. So I was curious about it, and I went to search, and I found Tense Care. So I decided to buy the device, but at the same time, I decided to visit a doctor to understand which solutions I could have. But here in Brazil, is basically operation. They are very interested in operating us because they can make some money as well. And the solutions for this kind of problem for incontinence, normally they are inside the room of the physiotherapist. We don't have any kind of portable device. We didn't have. So I had to choose between, and at that time I was living in Europe as well. So I was quite often in Europe, so I could buy the device. So I start to use it. I decide to use the device instead of being operated. So for my surprise, in a few weeks, I was feeling better, okay? And not only that, my partner as well, he could feel the difference. In the sexual side, it helps a lot because we get stronger. And because we get stronger, we feel more, we have more sensation of the area. So we both felt a big difference. And it was so easy to use as well. In 20 minutes, just in my case, I had the effort, the stress incontinence. So I just had to switch on the machine, lie down for 20 minutes, stay there. While the machine was working and is working, I use my telephone to do lots of things. So at that point, I was using it every day because I was very, my muscles, they were really weak. So I felt that I could improve them faster if I used every day. So that's what I decided to do. So after 3 months, I was feeling much, much better. So I was impressed with the solution, impressed how easy it was to use it, and also shocked that we couldn't find the solution in Brazil. So I decided to just bring it to the country and change women's life, also men's life, because it's important to say as well that it doesn't change only our women's life. Lots of men, they have been using it, and I can see that the result is very good. So at the moment, we are selling the device in Brazil. I talked to a few women who use it, and they're very happy as well. So I'm very, very happy to be a person in here that can provide the solution. And I will tell you, it's a device that really, I will keep using it. and I've been using it for 5 years. And my muscles, they were supposed to be weaker, but they are not. I can feel that they are stronger than they were before when I started to use it. So I'm getting older, but my muscles are still very fit. So it's a solution for women's life, and I strongly recommend it. And I'm very happy to be the person in Brazil who is responsible for offering this solution. And I have so many women who tell me, and every time I phone somebody, I send a message asking if the person is happy to have it, if the person has seen changes. The answer is yes. I see changes. My life is much better. So that's what I wanted to share here to people who don't know about the device, who don't know if it works or not. It's easy. It's good. It's very good, and it's a device that you really should have with you beside your bed, actually. So that's what I had to say, and thank you for giving the chance to share with you my life, my story.
Andrea, thank you very much. Thank you again for agreeing to participate and, more importantly, share your story. It's like I said at the very beginning, people do talk very quietly or sometimes secretly, or prefer not to talk about issues like incontinence. So it's rather brave from you to actually come along us and share your story publicly like that. So we do appreciate that a lot, Andrea. Thank you. I hope you guys have some questions later on. Again, Andrea will still remain with us, so you'll be able to ask your questions later. But right now, I'd like to invite another guest of ours, Katri Risto. Katri also has started her journey with us by trialing the device herself. So let's hear what Katri has to say. Since then, Katri then has went to promote our product in various publications in Estonia. Been working with as part of women health practice, but also then decided to do a degree in physiotherapy, which is interesting, and is about to graduate, from what I know, very soon, actually this month. Katri, correct me if I'm wrong, but the floor is yours now, Katri, and thank you very much, Andrea. Again, I'll send you to the room so we can hear Katri and avoid any distraction.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Good, Katri. I think you just need to turn around a little bit the screen because it's upside down for some reason.
Is it? Okay. I was just hoping.
Yeah, good. All good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, hello. And thank you, Andrea, for this beautiful experience, what you have. Yes, so let's say my experience with TenseCare started around 8 years ago. I was delivering my youngest son at the age of 42. And by that time, I have to be very honest, I didn't know much about pelvic floor. And I didn't have any problems, probably. That's why I didn't know. I was very, well, I like to play tennis and to jog. And after delivering my cute little baby, I discovered that I can't play tennis anymore because of the leaks. And so how did I manage with my condition was the denial first. So I just didn't play tennis anymore. I didn't go jogging. I basically didn't do anything what caused the leaking. So at some point I thought that I managed with it. But at some point, of course, I realized that it hadn't worked out yet. So I happened to meet a yoga therapist who was, the first thing she asked was that, oh, you're a mom. Do you experience any problems? And my first response was no. I have nothing to complain about. But of course, quietly, I was kind of brave enough to say that yes, I do have problems, and so I got first exercises from her, and then I happened to attend workshop where TenseCare ELISA machine was or device was introduced. And then my healing journey actually began. I started using ELISA, and first I was using it 2 weeks. I noticed the improvement. It was so amazing that I stopped using the device. So the symptoms came back, of course. And so I started practicing more regularly. And after, I guess, 2 or 3 months, then I took myself a horizon of 4 months. But I guess within 3 months, I was already within 2 months, I was able to go jogging again. And so I have to be honest, at that point, I almost like forgot the training again. I started to study physiotherapy and yoga therapy and concentrated on pelvic floor dysfunctions. As Lisa mentioned, I'm not graduated yet. I will soon graduate, but I already have my own practice. I'm a woman's health therapist, concentrating on pelvic floor dysfunctions and hormonal imbalances. And exactly this hormonal imbalance was the next step, what kicked in. When I became 49, I suddenly noticed the leaks again. So this was the moment when I had to just realize, welcome perimenopause. And so I started training again, more consciously. I do give training classes and I do meet clients, but when you meet clients and you give classes, you don't really consciously train so much. So I started train again, and again I noticed improvement. So I can again go jogging and feel peaceful and happy about it. So to conclude, I would say that my younger son and TenseCare have somehow changed my career. I was in design and IT before, so today I'm in healthcare, and I'm very happy that this change happened. So it has really lit up my life in a different way. So I'm very passionate about women's health, and happy to support this wonderful community we have among each other. So this was my little story. If you have any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you very much, Katri. Really lovely story once again. It takes a lot of braveness, like I said, with Andrea, to share that kind of story, to sort of confess that you have some problems, but it does affect so many of us around the world. And I think we need people like yourself, Katri, like Andrea, to be able to actually talk and encourage women to start talking and start looking for solutions. Because, like I said, again, at the very beginning, there is cure for incontinence, and I hope that together we can spread that awareness, and people, and mostly women, like we've heard from Emily's presentation, who are mostly affected, will talk to us, will talk to you, will talk to our distributors and healthcare professionals, and will improve the quality of life. Because if you're a mom and you're suffering from bladder leakage, life becomes dull, life becomes inactive, and that affects the family members, friends, community. So by improving the quality of life of just one person, it can have a ripple effect and improve the quality of life around them as well. So it's an important topic that I hope everyone will join us in spreading that awareness today, and going forward as well. Right now, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we set up the next presentation. The second part of this webinar will be focusing on our product, Unicare, and my colleague Idis will be presenting that along with Hanwei, our product development manager. So just take 5-minute break, a cup of tea, a glass of water, coffee. I'm not sure if it's time for spirits for some of you now, but whatever you please, and I will meet in here in 5 minutes. Thank you, Katri. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Emily, as well. Thanks. Do you have the same music on your slide? Or you don't?